Welcome to Reddit Saga. If you're a fan of heartfelt, real life stories, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss out. Thanks for being here. Let's dive into today's story.
It was supposed to be a beautiful day. Sunlight streamed through the bedroom windows, casting warm golden slants across the floor. I had just finished curling my hair, smoothing down the front of my pale blue dress. The one Daniel said brought out my eyes. Today was his wedding day. My baby brother, the one I used to walk to school, whose scraped knees I'd patched up, whose tears I'd wiped the first time his heart broke. He was getting married to Victoria, a woman we had all come to adore. Everyone, including me. The kitchen downstairs buzzed with activity, my mother calling out directions, pots clattering, and my father muttering about the seating arrangements. I was about to grab my heels when my phone lit up on the nightstand. Unknown number. One message. Don't go to your brother's wedding. Check your husband's garage. At first, I laughed. One of those nervous, confused half-laughs. A prank, maybe? Someone messing with me? But something about it. The flat tone of the words, the absence of explanation, the complete confidence of the command. It made my skin crawl. I stared at the message for a full minute before locking the screen. Ridiculous. Mark had already left that morning, saying he had an early client meeting. I'll meet you there, he'd said, kissing my cheek like always. His lips were warm, familiar, normal. There had been nothing off, nothing alarming. Except now this. I put the phone down and paced the room, telling myself not to spiral. It was probably a wrong number. Or a sick joke. I looked in the mirror, saw a calm, composed woman staring back. I had always prided myself on being level-headed. Emma, the responsible one, the rational one. But my reflection didn't match the swirl of dread building in my chest. I tried calling Mark. No answer. I called again. Still nothing. I thought about telling Mom. I even stepped into the hallway before I stopped myself. No, it was Daniel's day. I wouldn't ruin it over a stupid text from a stranger. But then the silence in the house, the empty space where Mark should have been, the way the sunlight suddenly felt too bright, it all pressed down on me. Check your husband's garage. The words echoed like a drumbeat. That garage was a space I barely thought about. Mark used it mostly for storage, tools, occasional car work. But suddenly, I remembered something from a few months ago, a moment in passing. Mark had mentioned making a spare key. Just in case, he'd said, tossing it into the old keepsake box we kept in the closet. I walked to the bedroom closet, opened the worn wooden box, and there it was. Small, silver, insignificant looking. I held it in my palm, suddenly breathless. This was insane. I shouldn't do this. I should be getting ready, heading to the venue, celebrating love. But I couldn't stop shaking. I slipped the key into my purse. Outside, the morning air was crisp, the city alive and moving. I drove in silence, my hands gripping the wheel tighter than necessary. The garage was only a few blocks away, a rented space Mark insisted on keeping even after we moved to the apartment. Said he liked having somewhere to tinker. When I pulled up, the row of identical gray doors stared back at me like silent sentinels. My heartbeat thudded as I found the right one. I got out, approached the door, slipped the key into the lock, and turned. Click. The metal door creaked open with a long groan. Darkness. Dust. The heavy scent of oil and old rubber. I stepped inside, turned on the flashlight on my phone, and scanned the space. Mark's car sat in the corner, unmoving. Boxes stacked against one wall. Tool cabinets. Nothing strange. Nothing out of place. My breath eased. Relief washed over me, mixed with shame. I had let a stupid text spook me into this. Then I turned to leave, and froze. There, in the back corner, was a large cardboard box, covered with a beige blanket. A corner of something shiny peeked out from underneath. My feet moved before I could stop them. I pulled the blanket away. My stomach dropped. Inside the box were high heels, red, expensive looking. A black leather purse. A velvet box from a luxury perfume brand. I recognized every item. They belonged to Victoria, Daniel's fiancée. I blinked. No, this couldn't. This didn't make sense. Why would her things be here? In Mark's private garage, I reached in with trembling hands and opened the purse. Inside, Victoria's wallet, a makeup bag, a set of keys, and then photographs. Stacks of them. I pulled one out and nearly dropped it. Mark and Victoria, on a beach, holding hands, laughing, his arm around her waist, her head on his shoulder. Another, sitting at a cafe, sharing a dessert. Another, kissing. The air around me seemed to vanish. My lungs forgot how to breathe. My body forgot how to stand. I gripped the edge of the car to steady myself. This wasn't real, but the photos said otherwise. Then I found the folder. Inside, printed messages, handwritten notes. I skimmed them. The handwriting was unmistakably Victoria's. I know it's wrong, but I can't help it. I love you. Once I'm married to Daniel, it'll be easier. We'll be together. She'll never see it coming. We'll be free. I dropped the folder on the hood of the car and stumbled back. Mark, my husband. Victoria, my future sister-in-law. They were together, planning something, using me, using Daniel. I wanted to scream, to throw every box, every tool, every damn lie into the wall. But instead, I stood still. The betrayal burned. But beneath the burn came something else. Cold, steady, clear. This wedding couldn't happen. Not like this. Not built on this. I pulled out my phone and began taking photos. Of the purse, the perfume box, the pictures, the notes, evidence. I wiped everything I touched, carefully closed the box, pulled the door shut behind me. Outside, the world moved on like nothing had changed. But everything had, and I wasn't going to be silent anymore. The air outside the garage tasted bitter. I hadn't noticed the morning chill earlier, but now it wrapped around me like ice. I sat in my car for a long time, gripping the steering wheel, my mind blank and racing all at once. There was no way to go back to how things were. The illusion had been shattered, every carefully painted surface scraped down to reveal something rotten underneath. I could still see their faces, Mark's smile as he left the apartment that morning, Victoria's glowing photos with my brother on their engagement shoot. Lies, all of it. I wanted to cry, to scream, to drive far away and forget any of this had ever happened. But I couldn't, because no matter how much it hurt me, the person it would devastate the most was Daniel. And I couldn't let him walk into that trap. My fingers trembled as I pulled out my phone again. I scrolled through my contacts until I reached Daniel's name. I stared at it for a few seconds. Then I called. He picked up after the third ring. "Hey, M," he said cheerfully, using the childhood nickname only he called me. "Everything okay? You're not at the venue yet." His voice, it sounded so hopeful, so full of excitement. "I need to talk to you," I said, trying to sound calm but failing. "It's important." There was a pause. "Are you okay? What's wrong?" "I can't tell you over the phone," I said. "Can you meet me? Just for a few minutes." "Alone?" "Emma, the wedding starts in less than an hour. It's about Victoria." That did it. Silence again. Then a sigh. "Where?" "The back entrance of the venue. 30 minutes. "I'll be there," he said and hung up. I drove slowly, every block, toward the venue, tightening a knot in my stomach. I didn't know how he would react. I didn't know if he'd believe me. But I had the envelope beside me now, filled with printed photos and text messages, all carefully compiled. I had deleted nothing from my phone. I had no interest in confrontation or drama. Just the truth. Just Daniel. When I arrived at the venue, the front was a blur of flowers, flashing cameras, arriving guests. I parked around the corner and slipped in through the back lot. Daniel was already there, pacing, checking his watch, his tie slightly askew. He looked up as I approached. "Emma," he said, clearly worried. "What's going on?" I didn't answer right away. I reached into my purse and handed him the envelope. "What's this?" "Just read it." He opened it, pulling out the stack of photos first. He flipped through them slowly. I watched his face shift, from confusion, to disbelief, to dawning horror. He stopped on one of the photos of Mark and Victoria holding hands, the sea behind them. His fingers clutched the paper tighter. What is this?" "There's more," I said quietly. "Read the notes." He unfolded one of the printed messages. I didn't say anything. I just waited while he read through them, one by one. Each sentence looked like it knocked the air from his lungs. When he reached the last note, he looked up at me. "Is this real?" My heart broke at how small his voice sounded. "Yes," I said, voice steady. "I found everything in Mark's garage. This morning." He staggered back a step, his back hitting the wall behind him. I moved to support him, but he waved me off, needing the space to process. He rubbed a hand down his face, then stared at the envelope like it might explode. "She told me," he whispered. "She told me she was nervous because it was her first wedding. That's why she was acting distant. That's why she wanted to delay the honeymoon. I thought she just needed space." He looked back at me, his eyes raw. "She was planning a future with him?" I nodded. She was never going to choose you, Daniel. You were the excuse. The cover. He laughed, but it was a humorless, hollow sound. And Mark? When did he turn into this person? I don't know. I wish I had seen it sooner. He dropped the envelope, let it fall onto the pavement. He leaned forward, his hands on his knees, breathing hard. I waited. I didn't rush him. He had to come to this decision himself. When he finally straightened up, his face had changed. It was still pale, still shaken, but something had hardened beneath the pain. I'm not marrying her. His words were calm. Certain. I nodded once. You don't have to do this alone. I know, he said, glancing at me. Thank you for telling me. A beat passed. Then he exhaled long and slow. We have to go inside. I need to say something. I need people to hear it. I hesitated. Are you sure? He looked me in the eyes. I'm done being quiet. We walked side by side through the back entrance. The ceremony was just minutes away. Guests were seated. Music was playing softly. Candles flickered gently on the altar. And there, under the arch of flowers, stood Victoria. She looked radiant. Absolutely perfect. Her veil hung just right. Her bouquet matched the roses in her cheeks. When she saw Daniel approaching, her smile widened. There you are, Danny. I was getting worried. There won't be a wedding, he said. His voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. The words cut through the room like a gunshot. Gasps rippled across the space. Heads turned. Even the musicians stopped playing. What? Victoria's smile wavered. What are you talking about? Is this a joke? I know, Daniel said. I know everything. About you. And Mark. I've seen the photos. I've read your messages. Victoria's mouth opened and closed like she was trying to form words, but couldn't find any. Daniel, I don't know what someone told you, but that's... It doesn't matter who told me, he said firmly. I know the truth. She took a step toward him. Danny, this isn't real. This is someone trying to ruin what we have. He didn't flinch. You ruined it. Long before today. She turned sharply toward me then. It was you, she hissed. You've always hated me. You've always been jealous. Stop, Daniel said. Victoria spun back to him, desperate now. This is insane. You're humiliating me in front of everyone. I'd rather humiliate you, he said coldly, than bind myself to a lie for the rest of my life. Her voice cracked. You're throwing everything away. I'm saving myself. Victoria's face crumpled, then twisted. She raised her hand toward me, fury building behind her eyes. She didn't get far. Daniel caught her wrist midair. Don't, he said. Just don't. There was silence again. Then he let go of her hand. Get out, Victoria. Her lips trembled. She looked around the room as if hoping someone would step in, defend her, stop the bleeding. But no one did. Finally, with a scream of frustration, she turned and stormed out, veil flying behind her like a ghost of the life she almost had. The room was still frozen in shock. Daniel stood in place, his hands balled into fists at his sides. I stepped beside him, gently touched his arm. He didn't look at me, but he whispered, What happens now? You breathe, I said softly. And then we start over. I stayed by Daniel's side as guests whispered around us, their voices swelling in confused ripples. The aisle, once adorned for a celebration of love, now felt like a warpath. All eyes were on us. Some curious, some scandalized, some frozen mid-gossip, mid-toast, mid-smile. And at the center of it all stood Daniel, shoulders tense, fists clenched, heart visibly broken but spine unwavering. He'd chosen the truth. And now the fallout had begun. Victoria had stormed out of the venue moments earlier, leaving stunned silence in her wake. Her veil had caught on a chair and torn as she fled, fluttering like a final remnant of the facade she'd constructed. I watched her go, not with satisfaction, but with a strange mix of heartbreak and relief. A life built on lies had collapsed, loudly, publicly, irrevocably. Beside me, Daniel exhaled, long and shaky. The officiant, an elderly man with a gentle face and trembling hands, still stood by the floral arch, unsure whether to step down or keep reading his ceremony notes. Behind him, the pianist fidgeted awkwardly, clearly deciding whether to resume playing or disappear through the side door. Then I heard a different kind of silence, the thick, suffocating kind that comes right before someone decides to speak. And that someone was Mark. He stepped out from the crowd, adjusting the cuffs of his navy suit with slow, calculated precision. His face was unreadable, but his eyes burned with something dark and familiar. It was the look he gave during negotiations at work, or when he wanted to win an argument with a simple smile. And now, it was aimed at me. "I think there's been a misunderstanding," he said, his voice steady, projecting just loud enough for everyone to hear. "Daniel, Emma, this isn't the time or place for this kind of drama." Daniel didn't move. Mark turned toward the audience, his lips twitching into an apologetic grin. "I'm sure we're all a little shocked. Emotions are running high. Pre-wedding nerves can do strange things to people." I stared at him, disbelief tightening in my chest. "Are you really going to try and spin this?" I asked quietly. "After everything?" Mark's expression didn't change. He took a step closer, lowering his voice, but not enough. I was sure the first 3 rows heard every word. "You didn't need to humiliate her like that," he said, eyes narrowing. "Or me." I laughed under my breath. "Humiliate? You think I did this?" He ignored me and turned back to Daniel, switching tactics. "Look, man, you're my brother-in-law. We've been family for a decade. Whatever Emma's showing you, whatever story she's crafted, it's not what it looks like." Daniel looked up slowly. "What I saw," he said evenly, "was you kissing Victoria, holding her, on a beach, in a hotel room, whispering things to her in writing that you never said to my sister." Mark opened his mouth, but Daniel held up a hand. "You don't get to speak anymore." There was a low murmur of agreement from someone in the back. Then another. The tide of the room was shifting. Mark's calm cracked. I saw it. Right beneath his composed exterior, the panic rising. He turned to me, venom now replacing the smile. "You couldn't leave it alone, could you?" he hissed. "You always had to be the center of attention. You were jealous of her, of what she had with your brother." I stepped forward. I wasn't jealous. I was protecting him. Mark snorted. "From what? A happy marriage?" "No," I said. "From becoming the next fool in your collection of lies." That broke him. His hand twitched at his side, like he didn't know whether to point or punch. But before he could say another word, my father stood up from the front row. "Enough." His voice wasn't loud, but it carried. Every head turned toward him. My father, who rarely raised his voice, who had planned this wedding down to the last name tag, who had insisted on baking the pies himself, was now standing, his face pale, his mouth set in a thin, angry line. "We invited people here to witness a marriage," he said. "Not a performance. Not a scandal." He looked at Daniel. "My son," he added softer. "You did the right thing." Daniel nodded once, his throat visibly tight. Mark looked like he might protest, but stopped when my father's gaze shifted to him. "Leave," my father said. "Now." Mark hesitated. Then, muttering something under his breath, he turned and walked out, shoulders stiff, anger crackling off him like static. The doors slammed behind him. For a long moment, no one moved. No one spoke. Then, one by one, the guests began rising, not to leave, but to walk over to Daniel. Aunt Claire, always the gossip, placed a hand on his shoulder. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart." My old college friend, who barely knew Daniel, hugged him tightly. "You were brave." Even the florist, who had just finished arranging the centerpiece, stepped forward. "Better no wedding than the wrong one." Daniel didn't respond much. He just kept nodding, tears brimming but not falling. Eventually, the crowd thinned. The photographer quietly packed up. The officiant gave us both a nod of respect before disappearing. And within 20 minutes, the room was nearly empty. Daniel and I sat at the edge of the dance floor, surrounded by candles and forgotten champagne flutes. He stared at the arch where Victoria had once stood. "I thought I knew her." "I know," I said. "I thought I knew him," he added more quietly. I said nothing. There was nothing left to say. After a while, he turned to me. "Thank you." I shook my head. "You would have done the same for me." He looked away again. "I almost married her. I almost tied my whole life to someone who was just pretending. She fooled a lot of people," I said gently. "Not just you." He laughed bitterly. "Still hurts like hell." "It will," I said. "But it'll stop. Eventually." Another silence passed. Then he said, "What about you? What now?" I didn't answer right away. I looked around the venue. The flowers, the candles, the empty chairs. The ghost of what was supposed to be the happiest day in our family's life. "I don't know," I finally said. "But I won't pretend anymore. Not with Mark. Not with myself. I'm done hiding behind 'it's fine.'" He nodded. And that was it. No dramatic music. No perfect movie moment. Just the quiet aftermath of a war survived. Later that night, after we left the venue, I went home. Alone. Mark didn't come back. But I knew he would. And he did. 3 days later, he walked into the apartment like nothing had happened. Like he hadn't been exposed at a wedding. Like he hadn't betrayed 10 years of trust. I was in the kitchen, sorting through documents with my lawyer on speakerphone. He looked at the stack of papers. "What's that?" "Divorce," I said, not looking up. His face twitched. "You're serious?" I met his eyes. Dead serious. He walked over, grabbed a pen off the counter. "You want me to sign something?" "Not yet, but you will." He smiled. That manipulative, charming smile I used to fall for. "You really think you're going to win this? That people won't see you as the cold, calculating one?" "I don't care what people see," I said. "I care about what's true, and they've already seen it." He stared at me, then slowly backed away. "I'll go pack," he said finally. And he did. By the next morning, Mark was gone. No note, no apology, just the faint scent of his cologne and the deafening silence of relief. The story didn't end at the wedding. It didn't end with the truth exposed or the lies shattered. It continued, with healing, with grief, with slow, deliberate breaths. Daniel and I leaned on each other. Some days were better than others. Some days felt like we were rebuilding from rubble. But we were rebuilding. Together. Because he said, "I do." Not to Victoria, but to the truth. And that made all the difference. The apartment was quieter than I'd ever known it. Not the peaceful kind of quiet, but the kind that settles like dust on your skin, the aftertaste of something rotten. Mark had left a few hours earlier. He took only the essentials, a suitcase, a garment bag, the laptop he always carried for work. No goodbye, no argument, no apology. I stood in the hallway, staring at the door he'd closed behind him. It didn't feel like a victory. It didn't even feel like closure. Just silence. But silence was better than poison. I turned back inside, looking around the place we'd once built together. Every corner whispered a memory I didn't want anymore. The sofa we picked out on a rainy Sunday. The photo frames on the bookshelf, some already removed, others too painful to touch. The kitchen where we used to laugh, cook, argue, kiss. All of it felt hollow now. But I didn't cry. Not anymore. The tears had come in the garage, in the wedding venue, in the long, sleepless nights since. Now, I was past tears. I was something else. Something colder, sharper, wiser. I spent the next few days in motion. I filed for divorce, met with lawyers, canceled joint accounts, closed shared calendars. Everything we had tangled together, I began to pull apart. Mark didn't contest anything. In fact, he seemed almost relieved to fade into the background, like a man retreating into the shadows after being exposed in the spotlight for too long. I should have known that was a sign. Because men like Mark never let things go. Not really. The first email came 3 days later. Subject line, just one conversation. I stared at it for 5 minutes before deleting it unread. The second email arrived the next morning. Then a third. And then texts. "I just want to explain. You're being unfair. After 10 years, I deserve 5 minutes. Daniel will forgive her. You'll see." That last one made me feel sick. I didn't respond. I blocked the number. I changed the locks. But I knew Mark. I knew how he hated being shut out. I knew how he turned guilt into leverage. How he painted himself as the misunderstood one, the victim of hysteria and jealousy. I knew he wasn't finished. So when I got the invitation to his firm's networking gala, an event I hadn't attended in years, I knew it wasn't a mistake. My name was on the guest list. My seat reserved. The envelope delivered by hand. A power play. He wanted me to come. Wanted to show me how well he was doing. How unbothered he was. He wanted me to see that he'd landed on his feet. So I went. But not for him. I went because sometimes the only way to reclaim your narrative is to walk straight into the place where it was twisted and stand taller. The event was held in a glass-walled building downtown, the kind where every surface gleamed and every smile was sharpened by ambition. I wore black, a dress I hadn't worn in years. Fitted, simple, unshakable. No makeup tricks, no jewelry games. Just presence. My presence. As I stepped into the atrium, heads turned. Not in the dramatic, movie kind of way, but the kind that registers disruption. I was a ghost come back to life. Mark's wife. The woman he used to brag about in meetings and leave out of dinner parties. I saw him before he saw me. He was standing near the bar, drink in hand, talking to a client with his usual brand of calculated charm. His tie was perfect. His shoes shined. His face wore the same curated smile I once thought meant everything was okay. Then he turned, and our eyes met. For a split second, I saw something flicker. Not surprise, not shame, just discomfort. Like seeing your own reflection after pretending it wasn't real. I didn't flinch. I walked past the reception table, nodded at a few familiar faces, and made my way to the patio outside. The city lights stretched like 1,000 little lies blinking in the dark. I took a glass of water and waited. He came out a few minutes later. "Emma," he said, voice low, practiced. "You look—" I didn't come for compliments. He smiled, and for a moment, it looked like the old Mark. The one I loved. The one I defended. The one I thought I knew. But I didn't know that man. I only knew the mask. "I didn't expect you to actually come," he admitted. "You sent the invitation knowing I would." He gave a soft laugh. "I guess I did." We stood in silence for a moment. The hum of conversation drifted out from the hall behind us. The wind was cool. I could smell the cologne he still wore, the same scent I used to find comforting. Now it made my stomach tighten. "You've made quite the statement," he said. "The wedding, the fallout, the emails." "You made the statement," I said calmly. "I just turned on the lights." He sipped his drink. "People are talking. Let them. I lost clients. You lost credibility." He turned to face me fully then. The smile dropped. The charm dissolved. "I didn't mean for it to go this far. You didn't mean for me to find out." "That's not fair." I raised an eyebrow. "Is that what you came to say? That I'm not fair?" "I made a mistake," he said. "A terrible one. But it wasn't about love. It wasn't even about Victoria. It was about being seen. Being wanted. I didn't feel that with you anymore." I felt the words land, heavy and calculated. He was good. He always had been. Making betrayal sound poetic. Making destruction seem like a shared responsibility. "I gave you everything," I said quietly. "I showed up. I worked. I built. I believed. You didn't lose me, Mark." He looked at me, waiting. "You just unmasked yourself." His jaw tightened. "So this is how it ends?" "No," I said. "It ended the day I found her perfume in your garage." He looked away. For a moment, I thought he might say sorry. That there might be a glimmer of genuine remorse beneath the persona. But when he looked back, all I saw was resentment. "You'll regret this." I smiled. "I already don't." He stepped closer, voice lower. "You think you've won?" "I'm not playing anymore," I said. "That's the difference." He stared at me. Then he turned, walked back into the crowd, and disappeared. And just like that, the air felt lighter. I finished my drink, left the gala, and didn't look back. Days passed. Then weeks. The divorce finalized quickly. No prenuptial agreement. No assets worth fighting over that I couldn't let go of. I got what I needed. He got what he deserved. Daniel and I spoke often. We were healing, together. Some days were heavier than others. But we never stopped moving. Then one afternoon, as I was sorting old documents in the garage, my phone rang. An unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. "Emma." "Yes." "It's Andrew." The name sparked something distant. Then it hit me. Mark's old colleague. Soft-spoken. Always in the background. I'd met him maybe twice, in hallways, at parties. "I'm sorry to bother you," he said, "but I thought you should know. I was the one who sent the message. The one about the garage." I stood still, the world around me pausing. "It was you?" "Yes." "Why?" His voice shifted. "Because she tried the same thing with me." My breath caught. "Victoria?" I asked. He nodded, though I couldn't see it. "She flirted, hinted at deals, pushed boundaries. Then I found out about Mark. And then I heard she was marrying your brother." He paused. I couldn't let it happen, but I didn't think anyone would believe me. So I stayed silent. Until I couldn't anymore. I closed my eyes, the puzzle locking into place. "You saved us," I said. "I just told the truth," he replied. I didn't hear from Andrew again. Not directly. But a week later, I received an envelope with no return address. Inside was a photo, Daniel and me, years ago, laughing in our parents' backyard, arms around each other. On the back, "Some truths are worth fighting for." I framed it. "People think betrayal breaks you. And it does. But only for a while. Then, if you're lucky, if you're brave, if you listen to the quiet voice in your gut, you get back up. You reclaim your name. You untangle the lies. You walk into rooms they never expected you to own. You stop asking for apologies that will never come. And you look them in the eye and say, 'You didn't lose me. You just unmasked yourself.' And then you walk away, free." The divorce papers arrived on a Thursday afternoon, dropped into my mailbox without ceremony. The envelope was thick, stamped, and official, heavy with finality. I held it for a moment before opening it, just long enough to acknowledge the weight of what it meant. Then I sliced it open with a butter knife and skimmed the words. Final decree. Irreconcilable differences. Divided assets. No further obligations. It was done. No fireworks. No courtroom drama. Just a quiet, legal erasure of a decade-long chapter in my life. I didn't cry. I didn't even sigh. I just placed the papers on the counter, brewed a cup of tea, and sat in the silence of my new apartment, a modest space on the edge of the city, filled only with the things I'd chosen to bring with me. No ghosts. No photographs of people who lied. No furniture I had to pretend to still love. Just clean walls. Blank space. A beginning. I hadn't just left Mark. I had left everything that came with him. The cautious smiles at parties, the shallow conversations, the invisible compromises. I had left the version of myself who used to flinch at confrontation, who used to second-guess her instincts, who smiled through confusion and swallowed suspicion like it was her job to maintain peace. That woman had been burned down, but in her place, I had built something better. Not louder, not angrier, just stronger, clearer, quieter in the right ways. And I wasn't alone in that. Daniel had changed too. In the weeks after the wedding, that wasn't. We leaned on each other more than we ever had. Grief connected us, but it didn't define us. We'd survived the same betrayal through different doors and found one another on the other side, raw, wounded, but still standing. One evening, he came over carrying a camera around his neck and a bag of takeout in his hand. He looked lighter, like he'd started breathing again. I took this on my road trip last weekend, he said, showing me a photo of a coastal sunrise. It's blurry in the corner, but I kind of like it that way. I do too, I said, handing him a glass of wine. We ate on the floor of my living room, surrounded by half-unpacked boxes and music from an old speaker. It didn't feel like starting over. It felt like shedding skin, letting something new breathe underneath. I've been thinking about opening a studio, he said casually. Nothing big, just portraits, events, maybe street shots. I smiled. You should. He looked down, then up again. It's weird, isn't it? How you can be so sure of your path, and then life rips the road out from under you. But then you realize maybe that wasn't the road you were supposed to be on anyway. I nodded. The detour becomes the destination. He laughed. Exactly. There was something healing in those nights. Not because they erased what happened, but because they reminded us we could still laugh. Still eat. Still dream. Still love. Not in the romantic sense. Not yet. Maybe not for a long time, but in the everyday way. The kind of love that says, you're not broken beyond repair. You're still worthy of good things. I left my old job not long after. The office felt like a museum of who I used to be. Polished, competent, always in control. But I wasn't interested in control anymore. I wanted curiosity, creativity, things that made my heart move. So I accepted a position at a non-profit accounting consultancy, smaller pay, longer hours, but real stories behind every spreadsheet. People who ran community shelters, artists trying to keep their studios afloat, single mothers opening bakeries. I found joy in helping them make sense of their money, their systems, their futures. I wasn't chasing power anymore. I was building purpose. Some days were hard. I won't pretend otherwise. There were mornings I'd wake up disoriented, reaching for a ring I no longer wore. Nights when I'd see a couple holding hands at a crosswalk and feel a pang of envy so sharp it took my breath away. But I let those feelings come, and I let them go. I didn't fight the ache. I just didn't feed it. Instead, I poured that energy into rebuilding. I joined a local book club, something I used to scoff at in the past. I reconnected with old college friends I'd lost to Mark's social schedule. I painted again, badly, but with full abandon. I ran on Sunday mornings. I cooked with the windows open and the music too loud. I kissed a man I met at a lecture once, just to see if I still could. I could. It didn't lead anywhere, but it didn't need to. It was enough to feel the spark, to feel alive. And then, one Saturday, I came home to find an envelope on my doorstep. No name, no return address. Inside, a photograph. Me and Daniel at a backyard barbecue, years ago. Our arms around each other, both of us mid-laugh, sun in our eyes. A moment before the storm. A moment still untouched. On the back, a note written in neat block letters. Some truths are worth fighting for. I knew who it was from. Andrew, the quiet man in the background. The one who saw everything and said something. The one who changed everything with a single anonymous message. I framed the photo, put it on the mantle, not as a reminder of what we lost, but of what we still had. I don't believe in happy endings anymore. Not the storybook kind, anyway. But I believe in transformation. I believe in the kind of happiness that isn't loud, but steady. The kind that doesn't erase your past, but integrates it. Like a scar that no longer hurts when you press it, but reminds you where you've been. I believe in second beginnings. In mornings where you wake up and realize you don't miss them anymore. In afternoons where you catch your own reflection and think, I like who I'm becoming. In nights where your silence isn't loneliness, it's peace. Mark's betrayal burned me, but it didn't break me. And that, in the end, is what mattered most. There's something strange about the way life teaches you. It rarely whispers. It rarely arrives gently at your door with clear instructions or a warning. No, life breaks through like a storm, uninvited and merciless. It sweeps away what you thought was solid. It peels back what was shiny and shows you the rust beneath. And for a moment, or a long while, you think it's ruined you. But then something happens. In the stillness that follows the collapse, you begin to see the truth. For me, the collapse came in the form of betrayal. From my husband, whom I loved. From a woman I once trusted to join our family. From the quiet, complicit silence that surrounded it all until it couldn't anymore. It took losing everything I thought was stable, my marriage, my home, my sense of security, to understand what was real. The first lesson I learned was this: your instincts are not your enemy. So many times, I had felt something was off. I had paused at odd moments, heard tones in Mark's voice that didn't sit right, noticed things Victoria said that didn't fully add up. But I brushed them aside. I told myself I was being paranoid. I convinced myself that doubt was disloyalty, that asking questions was an act of mistrust. But doubt isn't disloyalty. It's a signal. It's your inner compass trying to protect you when your heart is too generous to see the danger. I learned that listening to that quiet voice inside me, especially when everything looks perfect on the outside, isn't just okay. It's necessary. The second lesson: truth costs something. But silence costs more. Telling Daniel the truth about Victoria was one of the hardest things I've ever done. Not just because I loved him, but because I knew what it would destroy. I knew the timing was brutal. I knew it would break hearts, create ripples that couldn't be undone. But I also knew that a wedding built on lies is not a celebration. It's a ceremony of collapse delayed. And so I chose to speak. I chose to rip off the mask. And in doing so, I learned something powerful. Truth doesn't ruin relationships. It reveals them. The ones that survive truth become stronger. The ones that shatter were never real to begin with. The third lesson: you are not what they did to you. For weeks after the fallout, I found myself spiraling into identity confusion. Who was I, if not Mark's wife? If not the woman who hosted dinners, balanced spreadsheets, made things work? If I wasn't part of that life anymore, was I less valuable? But pain has a way of clarifying. I realized I was still me, only clearer, sharper, less afraid. The betrayal didn't define me. It refined me. It burned away the parts that were bending too much, tolerating too much, staying small to avoid conflict. What remained was someone I actually liked, someone I had forgotten I could be. The fourth lesson: love isn't always what you expect, but it's always what you deserve. I used to think love meant compromise, endurance, giving the benefit of the doubt, over and over, even when it hurt. But now I know that love, real love, is never one-sided. It doesn't ask you to shrink. It doesn't demand silence. It doesn't live in shadows. Love is being seen, fully. Love is someone standing beside you when the ground breaks. Love is your brother hugging you with trembling hands after his world collapses. Love is a stranger sending a warning message because they saw the truth and couldn't keep it in. Love is friends checking in when the headlines fade. Love is choosing yourself, not as a consolation prize, but as the first-place trophy. The fifth lesson: starting over isn't weakness. It's power. When I moved into my new apartment, when I left my old job, when I let go of the life I had spent years building, it felt like failure. Like I had wasted so much time investing in something fake. But I've come to realize that starting over doesn't erase your past. It reclaims it. Every choice I made, even the wrong ones, taught me what I now carry forward. Starting over wasn't losing the race. It was realizing I'd been running in the wrong direction and finally turning around. And the final lesson: peace doesn't come when everything is fixed. It comes when you stop needing it to be. I used to chase resolution. I wanted every question answered, every lie accounted for, every pain apologized for. But not all stories get clean endings. Sometimes the apology never comes. Sometimes the people who hurt you walk away, still convinced they were right. And that's okay. Peace, I've learned, is not the absence of pain. It's the presence of self-respect. It's the deep, quiet knowing that you made it out, that you didn't let it harden you, that you can stand in your own space, look in the mirror, and say, I'm still here, and I like who I am. So yes, I lost a marriage. I lost illusions. I lost the future I once imagined. But I found something greater. I found myself. And in the end, that's not a tragedy. It's a triumph.